Hello, everybody, and welcome to our From the Field Farm Chat with Idaho Wheat. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Ryan Mortensen. I'm the Communications and Programs Manager for the Idaho Wheat Commission. And today we are so happy to have Sean Finnie with us today. Sean Finnie is the Director of the USDA Agricultural Research Services Western Wheat Quality Lab. Did I get that right, Sean?
You did, yeah.
Up in Pullman, Washington. And we are excited to have Sean on with us today to talk to us about the Western Wheat Quality Lab, what he does in his role as that director, and to learn from him today. So, Sean, if you want to go ahead and take it away with an introduction of yourself, and then we'll jump into some history about the Wheat Quality Lab with you.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for this opportunity to be here and to represent the USDA-ARS. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So I'm with the USDA Western Wheat Quality Lab. I've been in this leadership role for about a year and a half. So I just joined relatively to other employees here. I came to the USDA from some experience with the industry. So I worked for a flour milling company, Bay State Milling, for about eight years, really helping them with their cultivar development program. And then before that, I worked for Cargill, which is a big ag ingredient company as well. So I had about 15 years of industry experience on ingredient development, and then came to this role with the USDA. Some background about myself. I actually did grow up in Moscow, Idaho, so that's where I had my childhood, and I went to at least my undergrad and master's from the University of Idaho there. Um, and then I had a chance to move back to the Pacific Northwest, so we did, and now I'm here. I do have a PhD in grain science from Kansas State University, and then a master's and bachelor's in food science from Idaho. And when I was at Idaho, I actually got to work in this lab as a student. So I worked with the previous director, Craig Morris, for a number of years as an undergraduate researcher, and then a master's student with him, and that's where I got exposed to this lab.
Great, thank you. I just want to remind our listeners, if you guys have questions you'd like to ask, if you want to raise your hand, the icon, or if you want to put those in the chat, we'll make sure to get those asked to Sean to get those answered for you. So Sean,
Please,
if you can,
I just want to say, feel
yeah,
free to interrupt me at all. If there's a question, I'd much rather answer it in the moment. So feel free to speak
okay.
up if people have the courage to in the moment. If not, they could write the email or write the question. I can respond then as well.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. So Sean, let's just go ahead and start. What can you share with our audience today? What is the Western Wheat Quality Lab, and why is it important?
Absolutely, that's a great question. So within the USDA, there's an agency called ARS, which is the Agricultural Research Service Agency. So this is the research group within the USDA. So that's the part of the group that this lab falls under. So we're strictly here to do research that supports the stakeholders within the ag community. And in this case, the stakeholders are anywhere from the growers all the way to the end users. So about 70 years ago, there was a law that was passed by Congress to enact 4 different wheat quality labs in the U.S. So we are the Western Wheat Quality Lab, started, I think, in 1946. There's 3 others. There's one in Manhattan, Kansas, that focuses on hard winter wheat quality. There's a lab in Fargo that focuses on hard red spring quality as well as durum quality. And then there's a lab in Ohio that focuses on Eastern soft quality. But here in Pullman, Washington, we focus on a lot of different classes of wheat. The main one is soft white, but we do research on club wheat as well as hard red winter, hard white spring. So we have kind of a mix of all the different classes, and we're established really as a stakeholder research group to support the wheat industry in the Pacific Northwest, to make sure that the wheat that's being bred is not only really high in yield and high in disease resistance, but also high in quality, which makes it really marketable and gives a market to the growers.
And is it correct that the lab in Pullman is the is really the busiest lab, I guess, of the
Yeah.
four.
Yeah, we are very efficient. So of all of the labs, we do go through more samples. So roughly we do about 6,000 samples per year. And that includes actually 1,000 of those samples are pulses. So we have grown to support the pulse industry in the inland northwest. So we also have the pulse quality lab within this lab. But we do about 5,000 wheat samples a year, where we bring in the sample. We do a full grain analysis, milling, flour analysis, and bake on them, which is at least double what the other labs typically do.
With those samples, what are specific things or traits that you're looking for when you run those 6,000 samples annually?
Yeah, I think it really depends on if you're focused on a grain quality trait or a milling trait or an in-use trait. So in grain quality, we're looking for test weight, looking for soundness and those important traits as well. Um, for the flour milling companies, we focus on flour yield. So that could be break flour yield, which is important for some of the Asian customers looking for things like sponge cake quality and so forth, but also overall flour yield, which is important for any milling company to make sure they get as much white flour out of it as they can. And then when we do evaluations on the in-use quality, we're looking at things like sponge cake quality, cookie quality, which really have application for Asia, same with noodles. But we also do a lot of bread quality as well. So we do look at some bread quality to help with some of the domestic traits as well. And those are just very general traits. So and that's part of the cultivar development part of the lab. So one thing I should have mentioned at the beginning, within this lab, we really have two distinct tracks. The first is the cultivar development track, which is the track that is kind of our foundation, which we support the development of high quality wheat varieties, working with the wheat breeders in the area. And that's really led by Alicia Casonas. So she leads that as the scientist that focuses on the cultivar development part. And then I'm really focused on the long-term research part. So we have research projects looking at these longer-term, more foundational trait discoveries that then can be fed into a breeding program to enhance things like bread quality, bread nutrition, cake volume, and so forth. So there's really two distinct functions: the research, which is like foundational to help kind of feed the pipeline for superior quality products.
Right. Yeah.
So Sean, since you focused on the research side of this, I know you and Alicia put together a new 5-year project for the lab
Yeah.
that's currently in review. You want to give us a few of the highlights of, where you're headed with the research, where you think the opportunities are, and how this fits in?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and I haven't heard back yet. I should hear back here, I think in a month. I should hear back. It's been delayed just because of some stuff going on within the USDA. But really what it is every scientist, so I'm a scientist and I lead our CRIS, which is the budget. That's all terminology. That's not really important, but what is important that we had to put together a research plan, and it's reviewed every 5 years. So the research plan for this lab came up this last year, so I put one together, and it's really where we get input from the stakeholders and we try to find out what is the important projects that we're going to focus on, and then we incorporate that into the 5-year plan. I actually expanded the 5-year plan more than what's it's typically done. So typically it's about 1 or 2 objectives, or well, let's say about 2 objectives, but we expanded to 4 objectives because we saw some opportunity to focus on some of this foundational research. And really what it is there's some traits that I wanted to start looking at that haven't really been looked at in wheat very much, in terms of how to screen for them and how to incorporate them in a breeding program. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with the wheat protein gluten and how that's important for quality. You're familiar with wheat starch and how that's important for quality. And those are the 2 macropolymers in wheat. There's a third macro component of wheat that really hasn't gotten a lot of look at or focus at, and that's around lipids, which is the fat component within wheat. It's not as prevalent as you have in starch and protein, but it's still a major component, and it has a big impact on quality, especially sponge cake quality and bread quality. So the 5-year plan has a big objective to really understand what are the lipids in wheat, how do they impact quality, And more importantly for our market is how can we then enhance those and make sure we are selecting for the type of lipid that gives you the right loaf volume, the right cake volume, and so forth. And to build upon that, one area that I'm excited about in terms of wheat quality is we're not just looking at the functional quality of a bread or a cake, but we also have a nutritional quality that we're looking at as well. And with a focus on lipids, one area we're able to look at that really no one has been selecting for, which is on flavor, and in particular whole wheat flavor. I know there's a good program for hard white wheat in Idaho, which foundationally has been developed with the intent that white wheat is better tasting and so forth. But that's really a minor component in terms of flavor. With the major component of what that drives flavor or disliking are these lipids that are being broken down and causing the bitter flavor. So if you could combine the trait of a white wheat and a whole wheat with the right fatty acid profile to help with flavor, I think that will help drive whole wheat consumption. Which really gets to kind of a foundational statement that I want to make sure people get out from our work that we do is that, inherently wheat is such an affordable means of nutrition, right? I mean, I think an average American eats like 2 bushels of wheat a year, which it should be more. It should be 3 or 4 bushels of wheat, but it's been that high historically. But as we all know, it's been declining domestically. But if you just put a price on those 2 bushels of wheat that you eat a year, it's only like $12 to $15 of raw material costs, and that's an incredible affordable way of looking at wheat in terms of a vehicle of nutrition, and it's important for us to look at how do we enhance the quality of wheat to hopefully increase the consumption of wheat, but also reiterate the fact that you can get a lot of nutrition from a relatively inexpensive crop.
So Sean, the lipids, that's the target of the oxidation problems we have with wheat storage. Is that right?
For sure, yeah. So when wheat is milled, you're damaging a lot of the lipid bodies that are within wheat, and once you do that, oxygen they can then break down those lipids, and you have a lot of the off flavors that get developed. There's been some great work done out of Ohio State University on terms of flavor of whole wheat, and they've done some consumer testing and some just metabolomic analysis. And they really identified that the major components for flavor disliking in whole wheat products are these lipid breakdown products. And just like, there might be some growers that are familiar with high oleic soy or high oleic sunflower. I mean, those have been a target for breeders in the oilseed industry to give the oil more stability. There's no reason why we can't target those same pathways in wheat to help with the lipid stability and help with the flavor of whole wheat products.
So does that mean changing the lipid profile or changing lipid quantities?
Both, actually.
Oh, okay. Naturally.
So the approach is both. So within that 5-year plan, Jim, we have multiple approaches. One of them is like, well, if these lipids are bad, well, let's just try to reduce them, right? And that might be good for some products. Other products, we might want to just shift the profile to being more of the stable fatty acid and so forth. So I think that we're doing 2 approaches there as well.
So is this relevant for soft wheats and hard wheats equally, or is this more of a hard wheat based project?
Yeah, definitely. It depends, right? So I think in terms of whole wheat bread, obviously that's a hard wheat product, but there also are some soft wheat products that are used for crackers. I think of Triscuits and wheat thins, those types of crackers. Definitely not for sponge cakes, noodles, that really rely on the refined flour, but anything that relies on whole wheat, I think this will fit well within it. And to be honest, my target is hard wheats to begin with, and then we'll move to soft wheats from there, because I think that's what the opportunity is for improving nutrition and hopefully more domestic consumption of whole wheat.
Sure, good.
Sean, for end users, what kind of difference or impact would they see with this change?
You mean like the bakers, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's actually quite a few advantages. So besides just the increase in preferred, so less bitter flavor, so more better tasting product, the shelf life of the products will also go up, right? So in terms of whole wheat flour, I think some flour milling companies have like a 3 month to maybe a 6 month shelf life on whole wheat products. This could extend it to 12 to 18 months. I mean, we have to do some studies, obviously, but so whole wheat shelf life will increase, which then also translates to an increase in shelf life for the finished product. But to be honest, my target isn't the increased shelf life. It's the increasing of the consumption of wheat and whole wheat. I mean, for decades, we've been trying to encourage more whole wheat consumption, but it's really been stagnant at that 5% level for year over year. That 5% being like the percent of the milling products has been whole wheat compared to the refined, and that 5% has stayed constant for a long time. So we have to do something different than just encouraging people to eat more whole wheat. And one way of doing that is make it taste better. And hopefully this will get more people interested in eating wheat in general and get us to the beyond 2 bushels of wheat a year consumption.
But you're right. I mean, the nice thing here is you're impacting potential economics from the side of the baker or products, as well as advantage to the consumer at the same time. So there's an economic draw that'll help this as well.
Yeah.
Sean, if you can get bread to taste better than it already does, I think that's a win.
Yeah, I think there's definitely opportunities there for sure. I mean, I'm sure some people have heard of the whole movement about a more local supply chain, freshly milled flour, milling flour close to the bakery. That all is comes from the breakdown of those lipids. So if we can make those lipids not be broken down and not create some of these bitter compounds, we'll get to the same end goal of things tasting good, whether you're milling it then immediately using it, or milling it and storing it and then using it.
So Sean, you mentioned 4 different targets that you guys are presenting for the 5-year plan. What would be the others?
Yeah, so the first 2 are the kind of related. So the first one is this foundational knowledge on lipids, where we're just identifying what these traits are. The second objective is like, that's great that we identified them, but we have to give tools to the wheat breeders. So it's creating a pre-breeding germplasm that targets these traits. So that's the second objective is, we've now mobilizing this knowledge into a package that then we can provide breeders with. The third objective, which it kind of leads into that cultivar development aspect. And one of the key components for cultivar development is you have to have really good methods and efficient methods. And we're always trying to develop new and more improved methods. So there's a whole objective focused on how to create new methods, whether it's targeting lipids or fiber. I know fiber has been I haven't mentioned, but also a trait that we're targeting. But also starch digestion, but like starch quality and different tests like that. Also pulse quality tests as well. So that objective is really focused on developing the tools to screen this material. And then the last objective, which is kind of that foundational objective that this lab was established with, which is the cultivar development screening. So all the work that Alicia does. So if you can think about the 4 objectives, the number 1 objective, the first one is the fundamental research, and then each one of the objectives leads to testing the material and providing input to the breeders and the end users.
So you mentioned fiber. There's a lot of discussion at the Wheat Quality Council meeting about fiber. Where is that headed? What's the opportunity there?
Yeah, I mean, so in my previous role at Bay State Milling, I did a lot of work on resistant starch, which I'm sure you're familiar with. We got to know each other during that work. So that's just one source of dietary fiber is resistant starch. There's multiple other sources of fiber. There's beta-glucan in wheat, there's arabinoxylands, there's cellulose, there's FODMAPs. All of those are classified under the definition of fiber. One of the key questions that we want to address is what is the right fiber or the right combination of fibers to maintain quality or to improve quality, right? So a fiber might not be the same functional in bread as it is in cakes or cookies, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't be trying to find out what that is. So it's really saying, okay, if you're going to target a soft white wheat, let's target this type of fiber as opposed to different types. So we have some work there being done. But also some screening tools. One tool that I'm excited about is there's a researcher out of the UK who developed a rapid method for screening how rapid starch is broken down in wheat. So they use like a 96 well plate. So they could do, analysis on like, lots of material at once, and it gives you curves on the rate of starch digestion. And they did this study on the Watkins population, I think it was
Yeah,
Watkins, or yeah,
yeah.
it's a well-known UK landrace population, and they showed a huge variability in the rate of digestion of the flour, or of the finished products made from these different flours. So there's something going on. And when I see a large range of data, that means that there's something going on that we can start to understand and hopefully target. So we're in the moment of implementing that method within our lab. We could screen the material that's grown here in the Pacific Northwest to see what variability we see here, and if there's some ways of hopefully, having another target for us to focus on in terms of nutrition.
Well, that's cool. If you got a select, if you got rapid test so you can get at it quickly, because that's been
Yeah,
one of the frustrations with measuring fiber, as you well know.
for sure.
Years ago, we just, starch is starch is starch. And now we're starting to really understand there's a whole different layers of starch quality involved in wheat. And like this population in the UK put together a lot of wheat progenitors and early germplasm. There's a lot more diversity than I think we appreciate that's really out there that can be manipulated.
I was blown away when I saw the curves and that
Yeah.
variability. So we'll see if it translates to stuff here and what we can do from there.
Oh, that sounds great. Interesting.
Sean, I'm curious how or where do you see the wheat quality lab? How do you see it evolving in the next 3, 5, 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, there's a lot there, right? I think there's been a lot of discussions around AI and how we could utilize AI to help with some of this screening and development. The more data you have, the better. So there's work on developing AI tools to help with that. We do have a project that we're working on chickpeas that is kind of on that same idea, but there's no reason why it can also be translated to wheat. So I think, the data analysis part will be evolving for sure. But also there'll be always this evolving of developing new methods, like I mentioned before. I think that's something that I'm always interested in, is how can we do things better and more efficient. Um, I'm, obviously anticipating some questions about GM wheat and how do we screen for that, and how do we ensure that we have the right supply chains for the customers that want it and don't. So I think that'll be shifting as well. I obviously I can't have an opinion on either way. And who knows? I mean, I think here in within our both of our our import, or sorry, our export market, I think is always changing. And we have, the Japanese market, the Korean market, and the Philippines. I think that'll be, will change over time as well. I'm hopeful that we could get more domestic consumption of wheat grown here, but that does require a few, flour mills to be, utilizing or wheat more in this area. But I think if we focus on some of these end user quality traits, I think that might drive some more domestic consumption. So, in terms of the lab, we're going to continue with our focus that we're at now, but I think trying to look forward to opportunities that exist domestically, but also in the export market, I think are important. So I'm always trying to think of traits to be looking at and screening for, and I think lipids has a unique opportunity for that.
So, Sean, you just opened up a whole bunch of questions.
Awesome.
Let's start with, you kind of mentioned AI, and I don't think people appreciate how much data a lab like yours generates. And it's not easy data. It's intercorrelated, it's confounded. There's a lot of different things going on to try to make sense out of that data. So it will be interesting to see what you can do as you put all these things together and allow, whether it's AI or whether some other statistical tools, to really dig in and look at some of these intercorrelated variables to better predict quality and better provide us with insights on direction and quality.
Yeah, and we're a public lab, so all of our data is accessible. We've given
Right.
we've provided data to people for this very topic. So I know that there's been work being done with our own data. I think our WAS database goes back 30 years. So that's a lot of samples there for people to mine. people that are smarter than I am that can do that. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting what happens there for sure. Hopefully, I'm not working myself out of a job.
We're all starting to think that way, aren't we? So with your experience with Cargill and Bay State Milling, I did want to kind of follow up on where you thought there might be some domestic opportunities the PNW could look into. I mean, we've always been so focused on the export market. The Southern Idaho production is a bit unique because we do have transportation outlet in through the rest of the country. What is that background and from the commercial side bring to your thought process as you look at the lab and opportunities domestically?
Yeah, that's another really good question. And when I try to, you know, uh, make sure I tread somewhat lightly because I don't want to be someone that predicts where there might be opportunities for someone to go and potentially invest or essentially I don't want to tell people how to run their farm essentially, but I think the best thing that a lab like this can do is provide resources and tools for farmers and the grain industry to have to really when they see an opportunity, then they can approach that opportunity. So that's why I'm trying to focus on things that I think will create opportunity, which is the improving flavor for whole wheat products, um, improving quality based on some of these lipid components. Um, and at the end of the day, for the grower, it's income per acre. And that can come in many different ways. And I do think quality and nutrition is one way that could come about. So I think it's just trying to find the right material and not just find the trait, but also make sure that when I am doing this research, it's within wheat varieties that can easily be commercialized. So there's not like a 5-6 year delay. So I think what I'm trying to say is making sure I develop tools and resources that can be easily mobilized for a grower or a group to then take and then commercialize when they see the right opportunity.
No, that makes sense. I mean, part of our challenge is we have to come up with a consistent product first for our major markets.
Yeah.
But then it's the diversity behind that that's also really important to take advantage of for specific products, specific end uses, and to be able to also counteract the G by E that we're dealing with every year. So there's a lot of different variations in quality that we have to deal with, usually for consistency, but that also leads to opportunities that need to be exploited as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned South Idaho and having a good opportunity for some of that domestic, and that's something that I think is really important for the future of the PNW wheat is try to how to understand that there's always going to be this domestic potential for South Idaho um, and there's mills relatively close. There's a new mill being built in Utah just over the border there. So I think making sure that I'm doing work that's applicable to the end user products, I think is something that I'll keep an eye on and try to incorporate.
And it kind of puts you in an interesting position because you're between the Wheat Marketing Center and the state labs
Yeah.
to try to coordinate and develop targets for the PNW as a whole. So there's a lot of kind of digesting information from all sides to try to keep everybody on track.
Yeah. Yeah. And also for me, I just like to listen, and that's where I think I find the most useful, opportunity for research.
So,
It sounds like you've got some of your top priorities in place, things that you want to focus on, things that you want to do, and we're happy that you're there. We're happy to hear what you're doing and the good things that the Wheat Quality Lab is providing. Just on a final note, is there anything specific for our Idaho farmers that you can share, or any piece of advice for how they can continue to increase profitability, boost yields?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to steer clear about profitability. I mean, I think I don't want to steer someone wrong, for sure. But one thing I will say, so being an ARS lab, we are here for our stakeholders. We're here to do research that's important to the people that we represent, and the only way that we can do that is if we are told about problems or issues or concerns. So, I'm always welcome to come visit, see the lab, but really engage and tell me what are some struggles that might foresee that I'm not aware of. So I think that's where, it's a two-way street.
Sure.
So especially if you're in District 1 and 2, we're just over the border in Pullman. But doesn't matter where you're at, you're always welcome to come visit. And we're here to serve. And the people that work here, they chose federal work because they want to serve their country, and they're proud of it. So I invite people to come and visit and see what we do.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Sean. We appreciate you being with us. Again,
Absolutely.
appreciate your time. For those on the call today, we appreciate you joining us as well. I just want to remind everybody that this episode will be uploaded to our Idaho Wheat YouTube channel, as well as our podcast platform and social media. And just a plug for our next From the Field, we have Paul Arrington from the Idaho Water Users Association. Coming up March 27th, we'll talk a little bit with Paul about the water outlook for Idaho and what that looks like. So we hope to see you there. And thanks again for joining us today for our From the Field.